My name is Alex Mills. I'm the head of client partnerships at Quantcast. For those that might not know Quantcast, we're a next generation DSP. We're a platform that allows you to plan, activate, and measure programmatic campaigns all in one place. Today, we're going to be talking about the new way to do global marketing. We're going to touch on global consistency versus local relevance. We're going to listen to some winning strategies. We're going to touch on AI and personalization, and then we'll see whether we can have a sort of sneak peek into the future and have a look ahead. So before we get into it, should we do some quick introductions?
Hello, everyone. I'm Maria Galleriu. I am an executive strategy director, long title, for our international offices at 72 and Sunny, a creative agency company. I'm lucky to be partnering with these other lovely people. So yeah, that's me.
Lovely. Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Cliona Hayes. I lead the global brand and advertising team for Indeed. Indeed, for hopefully everybody here knows it, we are the world's leading matching and hiring platform. We have about 350 million unique visitors that come to us every month, and we help people get jobs, and we help employers find talent.
And hello, I'm Frank. I spare you my surname. I look after, it's not an easy one. Look after brand strategy and development at Zurich Insurance, which wasn't really on my bucket list of categories to work in. I spent 15 years at BVH in an ad agency, both in London and Singapore, so lots of global and local brands that I worked on, and now moved to the dark side. And hope we can.
Brilliant. So let's jump into the first question. So from a global consistency and local relevance perspective, why is it important to build global brands, and what's at stake for your organizations and brands when thinking of global marketing and the balance between global consistency and local relevance? So should we start with Maria from an agency background working with lots of different clients?
Love me some global marketing. I think the first thing to consider when thinking of global marketing, global consistency, local relevance is no two brands are the same. And I don't think there is a perfect, system and approach to go about it. Every brand has very specific, market realities, challenges, internal ways to operate, ambitions, and quite frankly, also vision for what winning means for them. And we'll hear examples of what it is for our partners at Indeed in Zurich. So there is a reality of, kind of needing to build a custom system. Now, we do live in a global world, often online, and building that level of coherence and unified experience is paramount for customers. I think a brand is very much about the meaning that you put into it. And if you encounter, different meanings from one market to the other, it can be quite disorienting for customers. And then comes the fun part, which is local relevance. Because when you think about it, max global consistency and max local relevance is almost like a contradiction and feels like something that cannot be achieved. But the question starts with, how does this brand meaning and experience resonate within local cultures, within different cohorts, within different realities and behaviors that you might have? And I think what we try to build is less of a top-down reality or bottoms-up reality, but the ideal way to think about it, at least from a philosophical perspective for us, is kind of a virtuous loop of learning and inspiration with like global, feeding local with some vision, local kind of having insights, that come back to global, which adapt. And it can be a beautiful two-way relationship that I think is kind of the ideal. Now, that's the ideal. And then you have to take into account budgets, realities, and find very creative solutions to be able to, find your way of doing it. So that was a long intro into the topic,
Good
but
answer.
how we think of it.
Frank?
Wait for me. No, it's quite a chunky question. And to be honest, the whole global local question is something that's been around long before I joined the industry. Will be still there and vividly discussed once I retired, and the answer is probably always the same, which is both, a little bit of both. You need to do. You need to be locally relevant. What bothers me about the discussion always a bit is that it's actually the words global and local mean often, can I use work internationally, or do I have to do something on a country-by-country basis?
I spared you the word glocal, though. So
Yes, yes. But for me, I don't understand. It's such a superficial, shy first step. And why do you then stop at a country level? I mean, people in South Italy are very different to the ones in North Italy, and people in that part of India or in that caste in India, or rich people in a country have different needs to. So it's just an argument towards total personalization, which is a great thing. And then the question becomes, how much can you build a brand on meaning very different things to each single one of you, and how much do you have a shared meaning? And brands do live off a shared meaning. If I'm carrying a Louis Vuitton bag, it's not just what it means to me, because it's also what it means to other people seeing me carrying it, as a stupid example, but so it
makes sense.
Yeah.
From an example, have you got any examples from an Indeed perspective, being a sort of global company?
Yes, I do. And happy to share. So Indeed is a relatively young enough company. We're kind of 15 years out there, but really about 10 years doing hardcore marketing, global marketing in multi-markets. And when I started with Indeed, we were doing it at a way where we would go on a shoot. We would shoot 4 or 5 ads and we would retrofit them into all the different markets. We'd change a seatbelt if it was in France, or we'd do things for different clearances in different countries. And it was kind of an efficiency play. It was like, it will do. We just want to drive awareness. We drove massive awareness with our media dollars and our spends. Then it came to a place we're doing system 1 testing and everything else. And we find, do you know what? Did really well in the States because the whole brain trust and development was in the States. Did okay in the UK. Tanked in France, really didn't do well in the Netherlands, and actually Germans just were like, this is not for me. So we have completely kind of retrofit together with our partners in 72 and Sunny. We actually brought in an office in Amsterdam to work with the office in LA, and really start to think about, okay, what is our overarching strategy? What are the big eyes? So the big insights. So for job seekers, this is what we deal with. So for job seekers, there are universal truths across the world. It's difficult. It's really hard. And at Indeed, we believe better work is better lives for people. So if you find your definition of better, your life will be better, given that your living and your work is such a big part of what you do. So we've got lots of universal insights. And then we say, okay, what is better work in France? What is better work in the UK? And we get down to these local insights. So universally, there are what we call absurdities. And I'm going somewhere because I'm going to share the campaign with you of how we actually brought it to life. So there's absurdities in the job seeking process. So one is people go all the way down the road trying to look for a job and they don't talk about salary at all, because in Britain especially, they're like, I don't want to talk about money, don't want to talk about money. And you're like, this is absolutely ridiculous, because what's my worth? And they're like, a manager in my company is different from a manager in another company. So that's an absurdity that is universal, but very prevalent in the UK. In France, for an example, in the workplace, people are mad to stay in the workplace after their boss, because it's a showcase of I'm working really hard or I'm really dedicated. So this kind of hang around is called presenteeism, and it's really prominent in the UK. But in Germany, ding dong, 5 o'clock, see you later, never going to be there. So there are like universal insights, then there's locally relevant. So we've gone from a place where we just did one shoot. Now we have lots of different insights, lots of different cultural interpretations. And when we go on these shoots, we do lots of different ads, but we also bring our social and content creators there. So we're not looking at like 30-second TVC cut down for social. I think everyone knows that is long gone. So I have a video here that I'm going to share with you, which is our latest campaign we did with 72, and showcases how it kind of comes to life across different markets, but is all cohesive of one campaign.
Let's talk salary.
Great. What do you typically offer for this role?
It's competitive.
So is it like competitive salary, or is it like competitive salary?
It's somewhere between competitive and competitive.
Right. And then the number would be...
Competitive.
With Indeed, you can avoid awkward salary conversations from the start.
Oh, a number.
What do you mean a number?
It's an actual number.
So I have 10 years of hospitality experience.
And a college degree? It just can't be blank. Blank is bad.
So a degree in Dutch poetry would make me more qualified?
Yep.
A zoology degree?
Yep.
Metalsmithing?
Yep.
Poultry science?
Yeah.
Indeed matches you with jobs that actually match your experience.
And what was your major?
Dance.
Oh,
So, in terms of salary, you were thinking...
I was hoping you would tell me what you were thinking.
I wouldn't dream of it. After you.
Honestly, I want you to go first.
No, you go first.
No, you must go first.
Please.
Set the salary from the start and skip the awkward chat.
So you still looking for a job?
Not for long.
Oh, yeah?
Turns out my ex's brother's girlfriend's best friend's barber used to do Tai Chi with this guy called Ted. Works at this great company. So I'm basically in.
Right.
Match with jobs based on what you know, not who you sort of know.
Oh, thank goodness. I don't know where I was going with
Pourquoi tu rentres pas chez toi? Il est 20h30. Pourquoi tu rentres pas chez toi? Je vais pas partir avant toi. Alors on y va en même temps. Ouais.
Bah alors, on a pris sa journée?
Avec Indeed, trouvez le bon équilibre vie pro, vie perso.
Attendez, moi aussi j'y vais, hein. Tu te rends compte, ils ont décidé de promouvoir Pierre alors que je fais 3 fois plus de ventes que lui.
Mais Pierre, il a fait une grande école.
Oui, mais moi j'ai 10 ans d'expérience.
Ouais, mais pas de grande école.
Rencontrez un employeur qui valorise les bonnes compétences, pas juste les diplômes prestigieux.
Ok, mais t'as pas sorti la poubelle.
Ah bah tu sais quoi, t'as qu'à demander à Pierre.
Allez.
I loved all of those. How difficult is it to come up with all of those different, obviously, commercials for every
Very,
market?
very, very difficult.
It is an ecosystem, as you said. No, it actually, you know, and I think a lot of people here obviously work in the process, in the creative process. It's about getting those insights and understanding those insights. And without going into it, I think when you work in a global role, most of your job is also stakeholder management and bringing people along the way. And when you're not a French person sitting in France, you have to make sure that it is the right insight that you're leaning into. And again, our partners with 72 would have a multicultural team there that help us with that. And then, yeah, it's just great fun. It is good fun. I think then underneath that is really important with all the curators and influencers that we have. It's one thing for Indeed to say, you know, better work, but what's much better is obviously having the community speaking about what are the absurdities that they're seeing, how can we make it better. So it's tough, but it's fun.
So it goes across lots of different channels as well.
I like that they call it absurdities, because insights can always be quite blunt things sometimes. You know, kids love their parents, you know, but that absurdities that gives you a hook to play with and makes it distinct.
I'll just build on that, but it's been interesting for us to sort of understand what it means for the way we think about building, you know, global marketing as partners. And it used to be, and maybe this is not new news to everyone, but you think you've cracked the big idea and then you kind of adapt it. And like there's local, you know, ways to bring it to life. What's been interesting in this process and something that we keep thinking about with our partners is we've actually introduced a sort of new layer of way of thinking, which is you have your big idea, which in the case of Indeed is the world can work better, which is a strong point of view from the brand. And then what we do is sort of build, I think what we're calling a creative system in some ways, which has very fixed building blocks. And those are the same in each market. But then within those building blocks, you have a lot of freedom for those executional insights, those local. So in this case, for example, the building blocks might be, you know, calling out the absurdities of the hiring process. That's like a big one. And those hiring absurdities look different in all markets. Number two, you know, giving a strong role to the product and making sure that, you know, the product has a, or feature has a big solve. Number three might be cinematographic realism, which I can speak less of, but you see how you build sort of like a system, and then within that system, you have a lot of freedom. And it's not just for storytelling and film. I think you can build that system for a lot of touch points, which becomes also very interesting. Anyway, build.
But it's important to have those systems and the guardrails as global brands because local markets are executing these as well. And I think it's Adam Morgan, like that beautiful constraint. You have your house, and I think the guy was mentioning it before in terms of influencers. You need the map, but then you've got like a little bit of leeway then to bring it to life in different ways across different markets.
And Frank, are there any sort of tactics and sort of examples that you can share?
I mean, very similar, really. I mean, there's some work we do globally, but it's the minority of what people would see in every country. And we have a lot of areas that work through systems, guidelines, visual identity guidelines, sponsorship, God knows what, tone of voice we're going to talk about in a minute, where we are not as hands-on and, standing on people's feet in the countries, but provide a framework that they need to execute on.
So yeah, you touched on personalization there, and AI is obviously very much a sort of buzzword. I think it's been around for a long time, but everyone's talking about it now. How are you using AI when it comes to personalization at Zurich?
Personalization less so, I would say. We use it more for scaling. And again, there's so many ways. I think AI, again, people go straight into personalized ads and change the background of the person, but you can use it to analyze data, to dig for insights, to all the way through making production processes more efficient, for media buying and planning. I mean, it will change pretty much everything we're doing and how we're interacting with it. But one of the examples that we're having is tone of voice was a big thing. We have thousands and thousands of letters and emails and policies that are not written in a language that most people would enjoy reading, that has a long legacy to it. And we developed a new tone of voice as part of our overall transformation. And then it comes to scaling. It's a real challenge to rewrite all those documents. And that's where we started, I don't want to say playing with AI, we're actually seriously using on it.
Brilliant. So that's obviously a really great example where AI is obviously saving you a lot of time, lots of efficiencies.
We couldn't do it without it, and it's amazing how it. I think the way you need to define it is at a certain altitude. So you can't go into the details of no sentence should have more than X words, because that doesn't work in German versus English versus Spanish. But if you have them on a high enough altitude, so we have rules like write more like you speak. And then every country and every culture can apply those things more easily. And the AI tool understands it very well.
And who sort of pushed that internally?
I mean, we developed the actual rules and started the training. And then we have an internal unit, SETCAM they are called, who actually started using ChatGPT-based AI tool with a huge prompt. And then we started playing with it and it worked. And now we have 15 countries using it, and every quarter we're seeing the number of documents rewritten going up.
Amazing. And I know, Marie, one of your clients is also Adobe. You had some examples from them.
Yeah, and by the way, I love that example also because it's a very universal insight that no one understands their insurance policies. True in every market. Yeah, I think just wanted to mention this because I find it to be an interesting example in terms of thinking of AI and making it at scale, which is we work also with Adobe as a global partner, and we work with them on things like Photoshop and Acrobat and Firefly, which is their Gen AI solution. But we also help them in the world of Adobe for Business, which has solutions that are really reshaping the way we think of content at scale. One of them is called Gen Studio. And it's about truly creating content, optimizing content, localizing content, distributing content, and then getting learnings on the content that you can then, feed back into the system. And we're trying to adopt a customer zero mindset with them and understanding what it means for them in terms of making. But what I find interesting also is it comes from Adobe, which is really a champion of creativity who've been making and creating solutions for decades for the creative community, their creative energy, their imagination. And so it's not really about just thinking of efficiencies in that sense of replacing, it's really about the best of human creativity coming together with technology and the possibilities of AI to sort of have maximum local impact and relevance and create some form of magic there. So it changes every week in terms of the possibilities and solutions, and there's new things that we observe. But for us, it's exciting as a partner to just adopt that sort of born modern, ever-changing mindset.
Yeah. And I think, you touched on something interesting there in that AI, it's not all about just trying to sort of replace jobs. It's trying to do things which computers, machines, algorithms are much better at doing in terms of processing data, and then the human sort of.
That's the ideal world, is it gives more time to the creative brains to actually do what they love doing, which is imagining and creating and thinking. So yeah, that's sort of the model. Telling that story is hard.
Yeah.
Because perceptions, and again, locally it's very different in some markets like India, who are embracing AI at a rate that is incredible and doing amazing things with it. In markets like France, I know it, I grew up there, who are very reluctant to adopting it because any change is difficult. So, there's fascinating also behaviors and attitudes linked to it.
But one thing that we say at Indeed, obviously the world of work and robots coming for your jobs and all of this thinking, but we say AI will probably not take your job, but somebody who can use AI to do your job will take your job. So it's a funny way to think about it. It means that adaptation is necessary.
Yeah, and especially in the world of jobs. I think there's so many jobs that are going to exist in a few years' time that we don't even exist now, which AI is going to create. So yeah, it's not all doom and gloom. So sort of looking ahead and some closing thoughts. What are your thoughts really about the future? What have you learned, and how do you think it's going to impact things differently in the future?
I should have kept what I just said for now. Because I think that is exactly what I think about when you think about the future. I'll let the strategists talk about, their magic balls, but I think from a brand marketer, it's such a dynamic environment that we live in. I mean, I was saying earlier, I sometimes wish I was an accountant, because you just plug and play the formula and it's a tried and tested thing, and your sheets are your sheets. When we come to work, we have just so many new platforms, so many new tools. I think you have to be curious and have to have an insatiable energy to learn every day. What are the kids doing? What are the tools that we're learning? What are the good things that we have to do? It's using the tools with the human oversight to get that efficiency play and to get that effectiveness play. And I suppose when we're here talking about global and local, as Frank rightly said, this is nothing new. It's cyclical. We kind of move in, we move out. Sometimes we're too global, sometimes we're too local. We've got budgets, we've got everything. So I think it's just bringing the energy, staying completely curious. That is, then you stay ahead of the future. And I think in our game, if you fall asleep at the wheel, unfortunately, you're out.
Yeah. We can't really predict the future, can we, Frank?
I keep resisting predicting the future. And I know our trade of planners and strategists, there are many out there who have predicted the future of the metaverse. And I don't know is the real answer, but I would fully agree. I mean, for us, for example, personalization is really important as an insurance company to really understand what problem someone has when they call. And it's very different if someone calls because of a life insurance if someone's partner died, or if someone has a scratch in their car, and to really use that personalized approach to show empathy is something definitely important. I think where I question it more, where it belongs and where it might not be the best tool, or there will be everything will be touched by AI somehow, but hard to say what exactly we.
And Maria, any closing thoughts?
I was going to share just a tiny I like it, about a different way to think of global, if we still have 2 minutes. But we've been talking about system thinking and, the virtuous relationship between global consistency and local relevance. And we've been observing recently with a partner of ours, which is Elf Cosmetics, the beauty brand, is that sometimes what happens locally can become global. So it's like a different way to think about it, because next generations, and honestly not just next generation, are multi-global, it's a new word, multicultural, multi-language, and what pops on one side of the planet can become kind of a cultural phenomenon in 2 days or in a day or in 2 hours. Entertainment and creativity are definitely global languages. And so what we've observed is also what you produce and the content you put out as a brand in a campaign that is very local can become a global phenomenon. So to give you a little example, we helped Elf launch in Germany with a very German insight and German campaign called Elf von 10, which means 11 out of 10, which is a whole thing about ratings. German people would never give an 11 out of 10 for beauty products, but they did for Elf And so we kind of like leverage that. It's always community up with Elf. As a way to talk about the products, we invented this scientist called Klaus who really tested actual ratings and reviews from the community. And then the Elf community worldwide loved Klaus so much that they started kind of interacting and loving and showing some love for him. And so we took Klaus to the Super Bowl for an Elf halftime show and had a whole thing about that. So just to say that there's an interesting way to also think about opportunities, and in this way that everything can be global, I think is like a nice way to think, about how to go next.
There's no simple formula.
Long little closing anecdote. I'm sorry.
Amazing. I think we got 5 minutes for some questions. So has anyone got any burning questions for the panel?
Yes, one sec.
Hi, my name is Sandra and I'm from Kenview. I'm interested in how you reconcile the need for efficiency with so going from one global campaign to local campaigns, and how you manage that internally and how that delivered from you.
Yeah, great question, because it's obviously multifaceted. I think the big thing is the data to prove it. And as I said, when we're looking at the effectiveness of the campaigns at the beginning, when you're looking at your awareness metrics, which are your very top line, we just want people to know that we exist and to drive bums on seats or, people to the website. I think when you're starting to go down the funnel, those campaigns aren't working, and you're able to showcase that we need to do more than just drive awareness here. So it's not just media spend, which can really drive awareness. We want to be culturally relevant. It's really about having the data to prove that up. So we would work with either System 1 for a creative effectiveness standpoint. We would also have country marketing teams in market going, this isn't working. And now even still, it's a more expensive thing to do what we did, because, one ad plug and play and retrofit with a localization agency is very different to all of the thinking that you're doing, all of the scripts that you're doing, and then going on set and doing 12 ads, which we actually have done over a course of 2 weeks. It was very hardcore. But I think then you're actually spending a lot more money on your production, and you're spending a lot more money on your thinking. I think if you ask the question again about the future, now that we have AI and we're trying to pull that in, it is going to help our efficiency in terms of probably on production or in thinking, like where can we plug that in to get more efficiency, because we have been driving towards effectiveness. And we try to find effectiveness in our media by, I think you can't compromise on the local relevance piece. Because when brands get it wrong and are tone deaf in a market, and I've been there, and that was the kind of business case that we had to put together, it's really not a good look. And you can kind of get away with it a little bit. But I think now with all the platforms that we have and everyone giving it a comment and commentary, you have to kind of go for the effectiveness and find your efficiencies, I think, where you can. That was also a long answer, but hopefully that was helpful.
Actually, just building on that, but I think your role then there was that you still, at a global level, like governing that whole process, right? So you're curating that process. So it's not just, okay, every country does what they want. It's something which comes from you at a global level. You work with the same agency, I guess, with 72. It's one process, and then the execution looks different. So there are efficiencies within that, right?
Exactly. And it's actually... it's our team that do all of that. We liaise with the country teams. So we say, this is the insight, this is how it's coming together. But it's all done exactly at a central level, and all governed by the one team, yeah.
And that's how you get the consistency, but still the local relevance. So brand consistency, but still the local relevance. So you get the best of both worlds, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose the efficiencies as well is like we would go on one shoot, we would have one director, and we'd have one production. It is mammoth for our production people, but... that's exactly right.
Great.
Hi, I'm Lily. I manage the global M&M's business, so it's just that relationship of like global local hits very true. You talked a lot about that kind of global to local, back to global, that kind of swing of business that we know. How do you kind of drive that agenda and that change, particularly from like a leadership perspective, in a world where like that cost efficiency and that driving down of non-working is often like really the winner for people?
Pass the mic.
I think as companies, we're in quite different places. So Zurich actually, before we started our transformation to this newer brand and more modern brand that we want to be, it was very local. And there was almost nothing happening on a global level other than this is the colors and the logo. And we are actually trying to do a bit more globally to build that cohesion around the new brand strategy. And it's not that we do everything, as I said earlier. If we see certain challenges that are the same across a number of markets, then we go, that's now more efficient if we take that and we work with those markets to develop work. And we try to build in some level of localization. I mean, usually it's about talent. And I think it's just the opposite of where you are currently, where you started out globally. So again, I think if you look at some of the most successful brands, they do both, right? If the big Nike ad globally comes out, most people adore it and understand it and get it. But hey, they're doing some super local 10K runs and activations and blah, blah, blah. And it's Unilever is quite good as a company and also doing that on all those things. So
No.
I
I just wanted to say, I hear you, girl, on the on the non-working always getting chopped. I mean, we are constantly and all the finance guys, well, the working budget obviously drives either the CPA if it's on the growth stuff, or it's the working what's driving the dollars or, driving the revenue. And we're constantly getting haircuts in non-working, and it's really, really difficult. But again, it's back to what we just said. You have to prove out just going, okay, well, it's only going to be, it's a hot air balloon. Right? It's going to go for a certain period of time. And yes, you can stop ramping it up, but then over time it will go down. So you need to just have your business hat on in terms of how revenue will be boosted when you come in with new content, with new plays, and making sure that you have all of the, all of your theories off by heart, but showcasing that you can't cut non-working and boost working. Like you have to make sure that you've got your kind of your business case together. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
Amazing. So we'll wrap up there. Thank you all very much for listening. Thank you to our panel.
Yeah, give it up. Thank you.